Hey everybody, what's going on? And welcome back to another video. My name is Courtney. I go by Courtney on Posh on all platforms. And today I have Kristen with me. Kristen, where can we find you?
Hi guys, my name's Kristen and I am half of the team Voyage is a Verb. My husband and I are full-time resellers. So you can find us on Instagram at Voyage is a Verb, as well as Poshmark. We have a website, voyageisAverb.com. Pretty much if you type in Voyage is a Verb anywhere, you'll find us.
Absolutely. And I really want to get into your whole Poshmark story and all the things. But before we even get into that, I want to take a look at your background in tech because I think you do something that's really awesome that I don't see anyone else doing, which is creating websites for other resellers. Can you talk a little bit about what you do with that?
Yeah, so I feel like, so before I've been through a couple of jobs through reselling. Reselling has actually taken me through a lot of my adult life. Like I've been a reseller pretty much my whole adult life. And every job that I've had, I've kind of picked something up that I've been able to use as now, like this is my business. And so one of those things was just how I could absolutely build a website. And I actually don't code. A lot of people don't realize is that these websites give you the tools that you need, but there is some learning. There's like a huge learning curve in understanding how they work and how you can build sites. And so I just was like, listen, I wanted to try my own site and I did it and it worked great. And I saw it out there for other sellers to also build their own websites. And so I took it upon myself to just throw myself out there and say, hey, if you guys need a website, let me know. And I think I've built well over a dozen at this point, maybe a little bit more than that, but it's been a lot of fun. It's just cool that I've been able to pick up these things along the way and be able to do that.
I love that. So at what point, for someone who's a newer reseller, at what point do you feel like they should start thinking about having a website, or what are the pros and cons to making a website?
That's a really good question. And I don't think it's for everyone. Like, I don't necessarily feel like it's an end goal for a lot of people. So I think, for example, a lot of people really just love the hunt and to flip items quickly and to move on and hunt more and flip items quickly. I think for those people, it makes sense to stay on the platforms that already exist because you don't have to put in that legwork to bring customers in, and you don't have to put the legwork really for customer service. That really lays more on the different platforms. So like Poshmark has multi-million-dollar marketing budget, you know what I mean? And they're able to put on events that we could never think to do. So to be able to do your own site, it's a little bit of a grassroots movement for yourself of you're now taking away from the time you are sourcing in order to build the marketing in. And so I think that it's only for the people who get really excited about that, the people who get really excited about wearing the hat and being in total control of your business from start to end. For example, whatever Poshmark puts out there, this is Poshmark's brand. It's Poshmark's platform. And so if they put out marketing out there that I don't agree with, well, too bad. You know what I mean? I'm under them. And so when you have your own site, you just get to answer yourself and to your customers, and you get to control it all. So I feel like those are the things, like somebody would hear that and they'd be like, that sounds awesome, or that sounds like it would be way too much that I don't want to do. I just want to flip things, and that's that. So I just think it's up to kind of where people want to take their business, you know?
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's awesome too that you have that where it's a deep dive into the website, but you also do redirects, which I think is really great too. For those who aren't familiar, a redirect is just say I wanted to have the handle courtneyonposh.com and have it go directly to my Poshmark account. That's something that you do as well. What is the benefits you think for someone having a redirect like that?
Yeah, I actually have recently put out a YouTube video on how to do it yourself because it's actually super easy now. And it's once you have your domain name, it's free. So the benefits of that, and I think that's the perfect kind of bridge between the two things of how can you start branding yourself while staying on other platforms, is if you think about your Instagram bio, or you think about your business cards or your thank you cards that you're sending out. Is the link you're sending out Poshmark's link and therefore helping Poshmark's brand, or are you sending out your own link and building your own brand? And I think that it's like $12 a year to have a domain, and it's super easy to set up. And again, I have a YouTube video on this. It's Voyage is a Verb on YouTube as well. And we don't have a lot of videos, so it's not hard to find. So if you guys are interested in that, you could go ahead and do that. But I just think it's such a beautiful and lightweight way to build your brand without actually having to make your own website and going all in, you know?
I love that. I'm going to link that down below.
Perfect.
Also, if someone wants to get a hold of you they want to take the deep dive into a bigger website, what's the best way for them to reach out to you about that?
So on our website, voyageherb.com, we have a section specifically for it, and you can apply there to get a website.
Perfect. And you talked a little bit about how these websites allow you to create a better brand. You've done an incredible job of creating a brand. And so I want to know, for those who are just getting started, or maybe even they've been reselling for a while but are still trying to figure themselves out, what's the number one piece of advice you have when it comes to creating a brand?
Oh, I would say for reselling specifically, I think it just depends on like what industry you're in, but we're mostly all here for reselling. I would say you are your brand. Most resellers are doing this solo or with a partner. Most resellers don't have an entire team behind them. And I say most, I know not all, but I just think it's so important if you're building a brand on social media to be the face. It's why I know you, Courtney, if you just had a logo and you were just posting things that you were finding, I mean, you would have gotten lost a long time ago, you know. And it's just the way that it is like right now when there's a lot of people reselling, and it's definitely a hot thing to be in right now. I just think it's so important to put yourself out there and to be the face of your own brand, and for people to know you and to know what you stand for. That's the biggest branding thing I could say. And I know like we have like background for our pictures that everybody like knows, where it's like a greenery on the side. Anyway, if you go to our Poshmark closet, you'll see it. But I just think like that's only like a small part of it. Like I think I could lift that out and it won't be a big deal. I think I could go into anything else and people will still know Voyage is a Verb for us, you know, not for our background, even though it's recognizable, you know?
Absolutely. So we can't talk about being authentically yourself without talking about you and your other half, Kevin.
Yes.
So how did you and Kevin, so this is probably a huge long story, but in a synopsis, how did you and Kevin meet, and how did you guys decide to go together with your reselling business?
Okay, so I met Kevin in 2007, and we started dating pretty much right away. It was definitely one of those like love at first sights. We were both leaders for an organization called Young Life, and we met at like kind of a leadership camp. And I like literally just fell in love with him right off the bat. We stayed up till 4 a.m. talking when everybody else was asleep. And it was just one of those, like, I was 18 at the time. And it was one of those like magic moments in a teenager's life, you know, where it's like, oh my gosh, I met the man of my dreams. And so that was, how many years ago was that? It was almost 13. It'll be 13 years ago this year. And it blows my mind. But anyway, he's my best friend in the whole wide world. We do everything together. And so we've spent a lot of our adult lives and married lives. We got married in 2011. We spent most of our lives like working at different things and then coming back together at night, and then it being like, this is life right here. Like we would go and work and we'd be like, we have to do this to like be able to pay our bills. But then we get to have like fulfillment in being together in the evenings or in the weekends. And there were even times of our marriage where we didn't have any days off together, where it was, you know, he was working weekends or I was working weekends or what have you. But reselling has really allowed us to take the evening part of it and make it our lifestyle. I think a lot of people like maybe cringe at the thought of spending their entire day with their spouse. And I think that is totally fine and understandable, but there's like something in the energy of us that we're just best friends. And I'm like, I just want to work with my best friend today. So yeah, that's what we do now. And he did it. He started reselling maybe 2.5 years ago with me, after I had been doing it for about 5 years because I needed his help, and he eventually just kind of fell into it with me.
So this isn't going to apply to everyone, but I'm just curious because I could never get my husband to help me with my business. He's very supportive.
Yes.
From a distance.
Yeah.
But for those who do have a partner who's really gung-ho about the reselling business alongside them, what's the biggest advice you have for power reselling couples? Like, how do you manage it all?
I think that if you're working with your spouse, something to keep into consideration is like play in your strengths. Kevin and I do very different things for our business, but they both are necessary for us to both be profitable and also grow. I'm usually up in the clouds thinking of new ideas. I've probably launched like 5 ideas in the last year, some that worked, some that didn't. And Kevin's usually down here shipping, making sure things like sending out offers, making sure things go and move, because like being up here is fun, but not a lot gets done if both of us are up here, if that makes sense. So I think just finding those kind of things that you're really good at and then implementing them together to kind of create that puzzle that makes sense for you.
I love that. That's such solid advice. Before Kevin became a part of your reselling game and you're figuring everything out on your own, was there any things that you did that you wish you wouldn't have done? Maybe?
Yes, that's a great question. Okay, so I would say early on, I was definitely a death pile kind of gal, unlisted inventory. I just got so into the thrill of sourcing. And I honestly think, and this is like maybe a little bit darker side, but I honestly think that reselling can sometimes be a cover for like shopping addictions or hoarding addictions or anything like that. And so I felt like a big reason why I've loved reselling is because I love shopping. I love the process of going through items. And I'm like, I can make shopping profitable, and that's really exciting to me. And so I really had to early on make that decision for myself of like, oh, this will continue to get out of hand if I don't put a stop on it now. So I had several tubs of things that I had not listed that I eventually donated. And it wasn't a huge deal because I wasn't paying a lot for it. I think I was paying like $1 or so an item. And actually, I think that that's like the bigger issue is if you're not paying anything, you don't ascribe a lot of value to it. So it's like, it's not a big deal if you don't want to list it now and then you're overrun. So that was something I learned early on. And Kevin and I really do not carry death piles. Death piles are unlisted inventory, but for anybody who's not familiar with that term, but we don't carry those anymore. Well, we kind of are right now because we're buying pallets right now, and those kind of come with built-in death piles, but we don't do it from like an emotional, like, I gotta go shop. I've gotta go shop. I don't want to work. I want to shop, you know?
Yeah. I think that is such good solid advice too, because depending on what you have in your death pile, certain items can start to lose value. And building off of that, I'm wondering, since you've been reselling for so long, how often do you feel like the reselling market changes with brands? And do you think that for reselling specifically, is it more driven by consumer wants or by other resellers oversaturating?
It's a great question. It changes very quickly. I would say probably every season. There's definitely differences that you'll see. There's some pieces that stand the test of time, some pieces that will be popular for more than a season. But I would just say probably every spring and summer, I'm looking for something different than the last spring and summer. Brands even, even in the course of these last several years, like there have been full brands that have gone out of business where I'm like, okay, well, I'm no longer picking that brand up because they're no longer creating new on-trend pieces. Everything is now dating itself from the time that they closed down. So taking note of that. But in terms of, is it buyer driven or seller driven of why things deplete in value? I think it's a little bit of both. I would say it has to be a combination of the two, because just the demand obviously is, as time goes on, the demand will go down because there's newer, better things coming out. I mean, that's just how it is. It's just always stuff coming at you. And then you have sellers who, are catching it maybe in the middle of its, or maybe even like a little bit after its peak of excitement, sellers are catching it. And as the excitement goes down, the seller's excitement's going up because we're like, oh, we just heard about this thing, you know what I mean? And so, and then it just becomes like a little bit messy. So you got to always stay on the outskirts of that. You always got to be looking ahead of what's coming next versus like what are sellers talking about. By the time sellers are talking about it, it's probably decently saturated.
Yeah, I agree. One thing I noticed that you guys do, which I find is really interesting, is I've noticed that you guys keep track of trends where you watch fashion shows. For somebody who is not a part of that world, what do you pull out from those fashion shows that you apply into your reselling business?
So we do a little bit of fashion shows. It's been a minute since we've watched a fashion show, to be honest, but I think in general, the general takeaway from that is like, we are curious about what's happening in fashion next. We're curious about what is coming. And so I love to troll high-end websites and just see, here's what's coming. Here are new brands. Here's this. And I like doing, whether it's a fashion show, whether it's looking on like these high-end websites, whatever it might be, I'm looking for commonalities. And oftentimes, like with most runway shows, it's not meant for like the general public. It's not meant for like, it's like an art show kind of.
Yeah, it's like avant-garde, very.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really looking at kind of what are some commonalities you're seeing, and what happens with fashion shows is the styles that you see in fashion shows trickle down to the mainstream in palatable ways. So you've got like exactly like avant-garde pieces, but then they'll take the big puffy sleeves that are out of control and they're going to make that palatable for the average person. So right now big puffy sleeves are a big thing right now. So just like, how can you get curious about the world around you? How do you get curious about pop culture? I think that a seller who thinks that they're too good to is beneath them, I've seen that several times where it's like, I don't care about fashion. It doesn't matter. I think that that's a huge misstep if you want to be really serious about selling things that people really want. If you really care about selling in-demand items, high sell-through rates, I think that those are really important things to be curious about and on the lookout for.
So one of the things that you mentioned there was talking about how you had a pallet that you recently got. For someone who has only ever thrifted and is now stuck in quarantine and is dabbling with the idea of buying wholesale items, what kind of research would you suggest doing before going into that?
Okay, so a pallet could be from anywhere. Like every single company out there has to get rid of returns, has to get rid of overstock, has to get rid of, especially when you think of like fast fashion, where it's like, this didn't sell this week and it's not cool the next week. Like we got to move this stuff, right? And so every company has those things. And so I think that there's just an element of just, again, it comes back every time to being curious, to researching, to putting in the legwork to see what you can learn about where those companies, like if there's like a brand or a company that you really love, where is their overstock going and how can you get in that? I think that's really important. One thing to note with most pallets, when you purchase them, you do have to have your business in order. You need to have a reseller's license. You need to have an employee identification number, or if you're just a sole proprietor, a social security number. But it's just like, you have to have your business in order because it's a step. It's not like, okay, I'm going to the thrift store, I'm out of stuff at the thrift store. It's not the natural progression of like, I'm out of things from the thrift store, so like, let's do pallets now. I think it's definitely one of those things you need to have space for them. You need to be able to process them in a timely manner. So you need to have a plan for it. And so I think that there is an element of making sure your business is in order, making sure you have a plan for it. And like you said, making sure that you have a sourcing partner that you can trust. So where is that pallet coming from? Both on what platform is it coming from? Because I mean, these companies aren't selling it directly. It's not like Macy's is out there and saying like, well, all right, guys, like on Macy's page, here's how you buy our pallets. It's not like that. They have like a third party that sells it for them and sells it off for them. So making sure that third party is trustworthy, looking into those reviews, as well as making sure like, yes. And there's some that are more expensive than others. So just taking everything in stride and knowing like, you might make a mistake. Like what happens if you spend $2,000 on a pallet and it's duds? Like, what do you do? So being mindful of that, I guess. I feel like it's
write-off.
What?
Tax write-off.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It takes a lot of capital. It takes a lot of space, and it takes you having your business in order, but it's worth it. It's worth it, I think, if you have the right partner.
I think that's so important to note, just because I feel like, especially with the almost like a scare right now that people are having because they're having a trouble getting inventory, I think that that's just something that we see online from other bigger sellers. And I think it's important to note all of the things that you just said about like needing the license and all of those things, because it's not something that we always think about. We just see other people doing it, and then we feel like that FOMO basically.
Yeah, totally.
That's what you need to be doing too. So I think that's really grounding advice, which is really good.
There's also one other thing to mention about pallets is there's two terms, manifested and unmanifested. Manifested will tell you exactly what's in it, which is actually really nice. I think a manifested pallet might be better and manifested is usually overstock. So it's like, here's a picture of what you're going to get. Here's the name of the item that you're going to get. Here's the retail price on what you're going to get. And I think that allows you to make those informed decisions a little bit better than like an unmanifested, like, good luck. But I think for like entry point, manifested might make more sense for most people.
Aside from pallets, when things do open back up, I know from your social media feeds that you do thrift, but you also go to consignment stores. What advice do you have for someone who's going to go to a store where they're spending more money?
So that I thrive in consignment stores and buy sell trade stores. They have similar pricing models. The difference is just on how they pay out the seller of the items, but it is my jam. It's my favorite because it's like an already curated space. So so instead of going through junk to find treasure, you're going treasure to find cheap treasure. And that's kind of how I perceive it. The first place I go is the clearance section. Almost every buy sell trade store has it. Sometimes they're like sprinkled in, but I really like looking at clearance because what's happening with buy sell trade stores is if they don't have a way to get it online to like a greater market and they're just doing it themselves, they're looking for people who are going to walk in off the street, know what that item is, and pay that item's price. And there is a limit with buy sell trade stores, and I've heard this many times from the people who buy inventory for it, like buy the stuff from you to sell to me. Is that there's a limit of what their customers are willing to pay. So they have very few high-end things. They really don't sell. I've never seen Louis Vuitton at our local Buffalo Exchange because it's just not their clientele, because they're looking for people who are coming off the street who are like, I'm looking for something trendy and cool. They know their customer, and so what I'm looking for is that how can I find high-end items that are priced at $15, $20 versus, maybe $3 at a thrift store. But I sometimes find that these places are comparable to thrift stores. Like my Plato's Closet might have a Reformation dress for $15, whereas, Goodwill might have a price at $30. Another thing is checking your comps. You gotta check your comps up and down, like side to side, up and down. Like I would not recommend going into those places unless you have really a lot of confidence in you, because it's super easy to spend up. It's super easy to walk away spending hundreds of dollars on items that you're not going to be able to move at a profit. So easy to do. So really feeling that confidence, checking your comps, also checking the garments over, because people tend to think that because they've already been checked over that they're good and they don't need to check them over, but it's not true. They miss things too, as well as people try things on and create new holes or create new damage to it. So making sure you're doing that too.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I'd also even add in and say that if you're feeling that confidence and you want to try out a consignment store, one of the things that I did when I first started going to consignment stores is I would take old inventory that I was like meh about, and they would take it. So then it was a little bit less money I was spending and more store credit. I don't know if you do that at all too, but
all the time. We take, I feel like Buffalo Exchange is our last stop usually for when things aren't selling after a certain period of time. We take it in and they like love it, and these buyers, they make the same mistake that resellers. They're doing the exact same thing that resellers do. Is they're looking at an item, they're looking at the brand, they're looking at the style, and they're determining, can we sell this? And we do the exact same thing. So depending on who you get, who's buying your stuff, you're going to get it priced differently. You're going to get them taking different things. And so I find that really interesting. Like there have been times where I have brought things, like I have made the experience of like, okay, this pair of shoes I got down to $10, but it's like Jeffrey Campbell or it's Rebecca Minkoff, and nobody wanted it at $10. So it's like, you guys take it. And then they price it at $50, because they do the same thing that we do. Is they see a brand and they get excited about the brand, or they know the brand, and then they're like, well, somebody will pay $50 for this, And so I find that that's happened many times. And sometimes I'm like, good luck with that. And I'll see it marked down, a couple of weeks later. But just keeping in mind that they're people too. And you can also get second opinions on things. So if you're selling to them, if you don't like the price they're giving you and you know that it's worth more, at least locally to us, we can ask them, hey, can you get a second opinion on this for pricing? And they'll do that for you.
I think that's so insightful, because so many people are starting to venture outside of just thrift stores. But taking things back, I know you have Kevin, but I'm sure you need more support than just that. Who are some people in your community that we should be following?
Oh my gosh, there's just so many amazing people. I'm gonna go for it. NCI Resale, Nick. He's 19 years old. He is a hustler. He thinks creatively on how to make money. He's doing things that other people aren't doing, and his sense of style is incredible. I feel like he's somebody to watch, not only for reselling insight, but also for style. Watch what he's wearing, watch what his friends are wearing. I feel like they're the coolest people around, and I feel like I've learned a lot from him. Number 2, Maury from Momry Co. She is doing something interesting right now with her feed. She is just like coming into her own. She is like modeling her stuff in a way that really you don't see a lot of. I feel like she's like a little bit edgy, a little bit on the outskirts of things, and she's just powering through and doing her own thing. And I love seeing people who are just like, no one else is really doing this, I'm gonna do it. So I'm gonna give her a shout out. And then Tiara, Rue San Francisco. She is the most magical person I've ever met. She's so creative, she's so artistic, and she does beautiful things. And
if you ever need a cocktail, she's got a recipe.
She's got like 300, 500 cocktail recipes, like handwritten in a box. I mean, she's literally magic. She slows her pace down. I just feel like she's like a pen pal kind of person. And I feel like magic is the best way to describe her.
I love that. So Kristen, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. If you could leave us with one piece of advice, what advice would that be?
Trust your gut. Everything you do, if it feels right for you, do it. And like, jump and the net will appear. If it doesn't feel right for you and someone's telling you got to do it, don't do it. Just trust yourself. You know best what you need for yourself and for your business.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day.
Thank you so much for having me.